So for those of you who are new to the channel, I do a lot of content on the World Mission Society Church of God. And if you aren't aware, I have a whole separate YouTube channel that's entirely devoted to producing content on this specific group. You can find Answering the WMSCOG, which is my other YouTube channel. I'll, of course, also put a link in the video description below. But if you're here and wanting more World Mission Society Church of God content, I would encourage you to go check out my other channel. Of course, we continue to put out former member interviews right here on Great Light Studios. But moving forward, that new channel will have a lot more WMSCOG centered content. And so, if you want to check that out, find the link in the video description below. Toni and Lindsey, welcome. It's nice to finally have you guys on Great Light Studios.
Thank you for having us. I'm Lindsey.
I'm Toni. Thank you for letting us onto your beautiful YouTube channel that we love and subscribe to.
Yes, of course. And so I'm sure for a lot of the people that follow Great Light Studios for the the WMSCOG specific content will probably be familiar with both of you guys. But real quick, just explain for those who may not be familiar. Explain a bit about your podcast. What you do, what's the goal of it? Just again for people who might not be aware that you do that.
So we have a podcast called Playing in Traffic. So I was a member of the World Mission Society Church of God for a very long time, similar to Anthony. And I got out a little bit around COVID time. And it was a very difficult time in my life. It was a very difficult time for my family. And I didn't really know how to sort it all out. I didn't know what happened to me. I didn't know that I was in a dangerous cold. It was a very scary time anyway, but my sister, Lindsey, me and her would have these conversations and, kind of talk things out. And then as, I'm kind of working through things, we thought we should start a podcast and sort of talk this out publicly because we thought it was really interesting. And so then the podcast just started out as a way to sort of get my story out and a way for me to process what had happened. For all of you guys that were in the cult, you know that your memory is a little bit fuzzy. There's a lot that you don't remember. And so one by one, episode by episode, we started talking it out. And it helped so much. And then we started getting in contact with other former members, which is something that I didn't really expect. Did you, Lindsey?
Not at all. I'd like to add, we thought the podcast would be a good way for Toni to tell her story all at once for family members who, you could tell they wanted to ask about it, but they didn't want to make her uncomfortable at family functions. And I was like, what if we record it like it's a podcast, but then they can just come and listen to it. And it'll be for the 10 people who want to hear the story. And that was one of the reasons why we were like, let's make it into a podcast. No idea that we'd have ever more than 10 or 15 people listen to it ever.
Who was our first interview, Lindsey? Do you remember?
I think I want to say it was Chad or Kelsey.
And we were so nervous and we had no idea how to talk to anybody else, But then it just really felt natural. And it felt like as we were talking to people, we were also processing through some things and connecting memories and, remembering all this stuff. And then we were sharing information, because as you know, the WMSCOG doesn't allow us to really share information amongst different churches.
Right. So
that was really cool. We could hear what was going on in California and hear what's going on in New York and then, all over the world. So then now it's just become just this amazing platform where we all kind of share our stories and work through our trauma together, I think.
Yeah. Well, that's great. And I've listened to a lot of your shows and I don't know, I haven't counted, but I almost bet you guys have probably interviewed more former members than I have on my channel at this point. I'm not sure, I haven't counted, but I know just to say that if you know, people listening right now, if you come to Great Light Studios because you enjoy the former member interviews, as I know a lot of people that follow the channel do, definitely check out the Playing in Traffic podcast because there's a lot of former member interviews over there. And even some of them are going to be repeats, you know, like you just mentioned Kelsey, who was one of the first members, former members I interviewed. But kind of the cool thing is, you know, you can hear Kelsey's interview on our channel, which is, it's kind of an old, again, it's one of the first ones, so I'd almost like to update that and do another one at this point with Kelsey. But you can go to the Playing in Traffic podcast and get even, I think, different aspects here, different elements of the member stories. And so just a little plug there for your podcast. And so I think today, we'll just, you know, we want to just do what we do with most former members, is just kind of hear your guys' story. And, you know, I'm sure Anthony will come up with some good questions, as he always does. And by the way, hello, Anthony. It feels like it's been a while at this point. It's been a while since we've done a video together.
It has been just a little bit. I mean, I think that there was like one in between from your World Mission Society content, but yeah, happy to be here and interview who I coined the Pit Pod twins, the Playing in Traffic twins.
I love it. And I love when people go, wait, are you guys really twins? And we're like, no, Anthony just calls us it.
Also, Anthony is, as always, sporting a shirt. Show that off a little bit, Anthony. There you go.
There we
Truth
go.
is not slander. Yeah, you always come with the good T-shirts.
Yeah, I mean, my thing is how often, you know, anyone who says anything critical of the church is called slanderer, and we all, you know, just kind of look at that word as something that's very hyperbolic and, you know, inaccurate, because all we're doing is talking about our real life experience. And just because real life, you know, shows that church as something negative doesn't mean it's slander. It just means we're telling the truth, and they're not the same thing. So that's why I thought it was a good shirt for today.
Yes, right. Well, let's go ahead and maybe get to your story here. And so Toni was a former deaconess. Is that correct?
That's right.
Was that your official title? Okay.
Yeah, I think in 2011 or 2009, I think I became a deaconess.
Okay. And so, you know, another kind of a unique thing, I guess, about this show right here is that we have Lindsey on, a sister of a member, you know, and that's, I think, a lot of the audience too that watches these videos is very often family members who have, you know, people who haven't personally been in the World Mission Society Church of God, but people who have family, and they're going to videos trying to find help, trying to find, you know, advice and things that they can do to hopefully help get their loved ones out. And so this will be kind of interesting, especially for those of you who haven't heard Toni and Lindsey's story, because this story really, you know, it wasn't just, obviously it impacted Toni at a deeper level, but Lindsey was there for the ride too, as you know, for those who are in this group, you know, you kind of, in a lot of ways, you're impacting your family as well. And so, yeah, I think this will just be a bit different. I think this is the first time we've had a double interviewees on at the same time, and so Lindsey will be able to kind of offer her perspective as well.
I did want to start with a question for Lindsey, just basically about what was your religious upbringing? Did you guys have any sort of church in your life growing up, or did you start off kind of without that?
No, we grew up in a very casual Christian background. So our grandma's very Presbyterian. You know, it's a very a lot of old people. So we'd go to Christmas, Easter. We both grew up believing in basic Christianity. And then actually in high school, I got really into like my youth group. I started going to a Nazareth church, and I was like on the church choir, and I was really into it. And I would try to get Toni to come with me. So it started where I was like, come on, Toni, come to all these churches and let's like go visit all these different churches on the weekends and try to find a cool one. And then I kind of was coming out of that as Toni was introduced to the WMSCOG.
But I always loved Jesus. I always loved Jesus, like since the time I was little. Because our grandparents raised us like that, right?
Yeah, like we always grew up with
the grandparents always taught us that. And so it was like, I remember Jesus was like my friend. Like I would talk to him, he would go with me all the time, like really genuinely loved Jesus. I say loved because I don't know, it's complicated, but anyway, I always loved Jesus up until the time, when I was preached to.
So then how were you first exposed to the WMS?
A really good friend from high school had moved to California and been baptized. And he called me from California, me and my fiance at the time, and was just so excited, Christ came, second coming Christ came. We have to keep the Sabbath day. You have to go do a study. So we went and we studied. And we studied a few times, and then we ended up getting baptized in the, random night in the bathtub, in the back of the, I don't even think they had a baptism room yet. So it was just in a bathtub. And that was probably the first time we heard Ahnsahnghong's name. And then, we left feeling really refreshed and excited.
Toni, did you get baptized before I was preached, before we had like the little Bible studies at the house, or were you still like in the in-between? You were
No, I'm sure I was baptized, because I wanted her to study Daniel prophet. And nobody really wanted to study it with her. They wanted to study with her something basic, but I was like, give her the good stuff. She's got to learn about 666 and the mark of the beast and all that. But she couldn't really have the patience to sit through the whole thing. And I was getting upset, because one of the really good deaconesses came over to our mom's house to study with her. And she just wanted to like eat pizza and stuff. And I was like, oh, we don't eat when we study. Right, Anthony? You don't have food when you study. Yeah.
Well, I was also a teenager. I was 18 and I had just found out I was pregnant.
Yeah.
And so, so Toni's like trying to preach to me, and I'm like, there's pizza. That's fine. I'm exhausted. My life is in like crazy shambles right now. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't have time for this.
Actually, like your life being in that weird transitional period probably was like a very vulnerable state usually for people. Yeah. And the fact that you were already kind of church hopping may have like been something that like would have made you susceptible for this. But
yes, Anthony, that's why I always preach to her, because I was like, she has to be our sister. I know how much she loves God. That's why it was so frustrating. Like, why won't you listen to me?
And actually, that's probably why I didn't go for it, because I think I was emotionally just shut off. I was like, no, I can't take on anything else. Like, there's too much going on. So it could have gone either way. I'm surprised that I didn't join, because I was like in the perfect position for it. But
you were young. You were going through this like really difficult time. Like you are like prime target for somebody who would join the cult. You were the perfect fruit. You would have been a double fruit, because a few months later you would have baptized the baby too.
I know, because Toni got pregnant soon after that too, so she did bring in another little fruit.
So Toni, were you just too young in the truth for them to tell you anything about your pregnancy?
Yeah, so I was only baptized maybe a month or two. And then I found out I was pregnant, and we weren't married yet, but, we were engaged, and we were so nervous to tell pastor, because we thought, we thought it was like other churches where it was like, premarital baby. So we were like, oh, we need to get married is what we were thinking. So we had like this sit down with him, and And he was really happy for us. He was like, "Oh, congratulations. Oh, good, good. No, you don't need to get married. It's okay. It's okay. You can wait." And so we were like, "Okay." And so because we were so new, we did receive a lot of like love and affection, during that time. Like they even came to our baby shower. And when my baby was born, they came to visit him and they prayed over him, which I felt like so much love from that, that pastor would come all the way to the hospital to pray for my baby. I thought that was like really special. And then after that, he really became like a Zion baby, the babies that stay with Kwanzaa name all the time. So it sort of like hurts my heart how much she like, of course I raised him, but like she really helped me raise him too. So I don't know. Yeah, I forgot what the question. Yeah.
No, I mean that's really interesting that you guys both happen to have this similar life experience simultaneously. One being outside the cult and one being inside the cult. So your pregnancy situation, Lindsey, and the way that you went through that process versus the way Toni in this cult and developing your gospel worker title and all this stuff, your pregnancy, the birth, all these things that were happening side by side. Did you notice kind of a difference between like the sort of care for yourself and the care for your child you were able to do, one versus the other?
I notice that this is really interesting, Anthony. I feel like I'm in like family therapy. I never thought about this before. It's a really good point. I noticed that my son would get sick more often. I know it's silly, but he would get sick more frequently because, when you're with the church members, all the members hold the babies, take care of the babies are around other babies, and it would make my sister really mad.
Yeah, because we lived together.
Yeah.
Oh.
And when we had our kids,
contamination.
when we had our kids, we lived together. So she would bring her son home from church, and then both of the kids would get sick. Mm-hmm. And I would be like, "You got to stop taking your little newborn baby into a room with like 700,000 people or whatever." That's an exaggeration.
But we had to keep the Sabbath day.
I know, but she would just like, even when he was sick, he would go back to church and it would continuously like bring in germs. And it was like way before COVID. So it was a different like.
Yeah, that's pre-COVID, way pre-COVID. Yeah.
So the idea of germs was like not as intense, but still like it was still annoying. It was still scary because we both have these newborn babies, and I'm like, stop bringing home your sick baby.
But we have the seal of God. We're protected. It's just a cold. We have to keep Sabbath day. We have to get God's blessings. Like Father and Mother's blessings were more important than anything.
But you bring me back the germs to Lindsey's baby who doesn't have this seal of God.
Totally.
Yeah. So Lindsey, I guess, you decided not to join while Toni did. I'm curious, what were your thoughts about the organization at that point in time? Like, were you looking at it like, oh, this is a cult, what is she getting into? Or was it more like, oh, this is a church, a nice church, and whatever, I'm just not ready for this, and good for Toni for getting into it? Were you picking up at all at the beginning stages that there was something weird going on?
No, not at first, because so we ended up living together when our babies were born, but while I was pregnant, I like moved across town. I was like, I got to get away. And so I just like, I really didn't see Toni that often for like our whole pregnancy. Like we'd see each other at family stuff, but it wasn't as obvious. And I was like in my own world. So when we started living together, that was kind of when I was like, why is there a picture of a Korean man and woman like hanging in our hallway? So it wasn't until we lived together. So there was almost like 9 months to a year where I was like, it's just a regular church. And then living together was when it started becoming like more obvious that like, oh, this is like a little bit different than a normal church.
So wait, 9 months after your baptism, you decided to move in together.
A little bit longer, about a year.
Okay, so about a year after she joined the church,
Yeah,
you guys
because
moved in together. Now, what did you go to the church for permission to move in with your sister?
No,
Or
no,
what was
because
it?
I wasn't really a full, like a worker yet. You know, I was still
Okay,
like, I was still, because I hadn't gone to Korea yet. I went to Korea 2 months after my baby was born. And then I would say after that, I became like worker. You know what I mean?
got it.
and we lived
And
together when she went to Korea.
yeah, we did live together then.
Yeah, because I know, I mean, for me, whenever I was trying to make some sort of like life decision, even early on, like a couple months in, like, hey, I want to go take a week and visit my family. How can I do this? And they're like, okay, well, maybe do it so you don't have to miss Saturday and organize it in a different way so you can, so I would listen to those sorts of things. So to move in or relocate, it's typically something you'd go to the church for. But I guess early on for you, before you're really super dedicated, you're still kind of in that love bombing phase. And was the church still a house church at that moment, or did you guys move to an office?
No, so it's a church building. It's still there. It's can probably fit, I don't know, 200 to 300 people. But where we lived, our apartment where me and Lindsey lived together, it was within walking distance to the church. It was so close. That's why they didn't mind. So I was still able to go there, all the time.
Wow, did that make you want to bring Lindsey even more? Like, let's just walk there together.
I feel like I went there a lot with you, just out of like,
She'd
hey,
come for lunch sometimes on a Sabbath day or.
yeah. At that point, I didn't realize how restrictive. I knew I wasn't allowed to do the Sabbath day. Like I wasn't allowed to come to a service, and that really annoyed me because I was like, it feels so sneaky that I can't come to service unless I'm baptized. And that like really annoyed me. And so I would come to the church just to like, they'd be like, come do a Bible study. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to come hang out. I might do a Bible study while I'm there. I don't know. It was almost like rebellious. Like I wanted to prove like, I don't have to join the cult to be here and you can't tell me what to do.
But that was so awkward. That would be so awkward for me, because I'd be like, girl, you either got to get baptized, study, or get out of here.
Yeah,
you can't just be hanging around.
I didn't realize that I was breaking rules. Like they didn't make me feel like, I don't know. I'm trying to remember back. I can't remember if I knew I was breaking the rules by doing that or if I just was like, what's the big deal? Why can't I come hang out? Like, why do I have to be a part of it to like come have lunch here?
Because they were love bombing you, Lindsey, at that moment.
Yeah, probably.
They moved on from that for Toni. So Toni, like, she was feeling the shame and the awkwardness of it. But even she was probably in that phase where it's just be kind and go slow, let her understand. And she'll we just have to have her study and that kind of mindset.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So what year was this then? I'm sorry if you've already specified that, but what year was it that you joined?
2006, I was baptized.
2006. And then you said it was COVID time, so like 2020 when you got out?
Yeah, about 20.
Okay.
They wouldn't allow me to keep Passover during COVID, and so that's when I really realized that something was wrong.
Okay. So about 14 years. It's a long time. Yeah. So I guess how did your life, like how did you begin to see your life change? Like you as a person, can you think back to those beginning stages and see how you began to change? I mean, maybe whether negative or positive, if there are positive things you saw, but what I guess started to change in terms of your life and who you were as a person?
Do you mean like my
yes,
cult
yeah, after you joined. Right.
So I would say after I went to Korea, well, I changed a lot in the beginning because you have to keep the Sabbath day. And when you have to dedicate yourself every single Saturday from, however long, 8 a.m. till 10 p.m. for your whole life, you miss a lot of things. And so a lot of your friendships are gone, you just don't have like the energy or the time to dedicate to those relationships, unfortunately. So through that, the church immediately just causes this divide, so, and then you just become so dependent on the members that they are your brothers and sisters. And so your whole mind shifts, your physical family. It's so terrible to say this. I feel so bad saying this, but your physical family is not your family. It's your spiritual family. So your spiritual family is your real family. So naturally, your behavior changes to accommodate those beliefs, right? So like little by little, you stop calling your family. You don't go to as many family events. You miss all the holidays. And so then all your time, all your energy, all your focus is only for the church and the church members and for preaching. And you legitimately don't think of anything else. It's like a drug. It's like you're addicted to it, don't you think? In the beginning, it feels good because it feels like you're doing something good and you're doing God's will, but then later, I'm sort of like an introverted person. I'm naturally, a little bit maybe shy, but because of the training that you had to go through, because unless you're preaching, unless you're a Bible teacher, you really have no hope for heaven. So I wanted to go to heaven so bad. So they told me that my shyness was a sin. It's part of my sinful nature. So I made myself, get up there and teach the Bible. And, I became a Bible teacher. And I would say that's sort of something that's positive now because I can work through those things. And even though it may not be my natural, I don't feel natural speaking publicly or something, I know how to do it and I can do it because of the training that I got there. And I can also de-escalate things really well because of all the de-escalations that we would have to do when we would go preaching or have to, break that news to members. Because I was a deaconess, there were a lot of things that I feel really shameful and bad that I would have to talk to members about, So in some ways I feel like it made me better in some ways. And then there are other things that I really regret and I feel sorry about.
Well, yeah, I have a question, actually. You brought something up that I've been thinking a little bit about. And you had mentioned how through the church, eventually you started to think about there's a physical family and a spiritual family. And that through, weighing out, the spiritual family lasts forever. The physical family is just an earthly family and this earth's going to be destroyed. So, no reason to focus on them. And you slowly close your heart to them and move on. And even though you are told God gave you these people on this earth in order to preach to them, God gave you them to have in your life for a reason, to learn something with. So one thing I was thinking, though, is how the church doctrine will cause you to be ostracized from family during certain family events, such as if your family gets together to pray for a meal together and you're sitting at the table and they're saying a prayer with the food on the table, you cannot eat any of the food. So imagine how awkward. I know I had this experience where, my sister said a prayer for the food on the table and I'm like, thanks a lot, I can't eat. Why'd you have to go and do that? And it caused a lot of friction and, they're mad at me and I'm mad at them. And, we had this situation. And you just become awkward. I need to excuse myself for prayer time. All these weird things that you do that just alienate you from your family. Can you explain a little bit about maybe Lindsey, I think your perspective of this and as a witness first, might be a great thing to hear about is as these like culture of cult comes into her life. How did you witness how her dynamic within the family started to shift because of these like church policies?
Yeah, I was thinking about that while she was describing it. On my end, it was like everything that individualized her she became this like shell version of herself. Like you couldn't talk to her about pop culture. You couldn't be like, hey, did you see this new movie? Oh, wait, never mind. Of course you didn't see it. It's not The Matrix. So yeah, the pop culture references, couldn't talk to her about that. The funny thing that I was kind of giggling during the leaving the room for the prayer, Toni would say, oh, well, we need to leave the room for prayer. And at that point, I wasn't religious. And so I'd be like, oh, well, Toni gets to leave the room. How come I have to stay here for the prayer? So I would actually leave with Toni, like kind of as a joke to be like, well, if she doesn't have to do it, then I don't want to do it. And I think in a way, that's probably what, there was still a line of like sisterhood in there because of it.
Okay, but funny story. This last time, I don't know if it was Thanksgiving or something, Lindsey didn't pray, but I did. So
did I leave the room?
Yeah, you left the room and I stayed.
Really? I don't remember. I always felt like I was doing it as this like showy thing, like Toni's leaving the room, so I get to leave the room.
But yeah, Toni, you're right. It makes you so awkward. It makes you feel so sick, and it makes you feel it just makes you, and then it makes you not want to even be in the situation. You're like, I'm not even going to go because when I go, I just look weird. I don't know what to talk about. I have no idea what the hell she's talking about. Pop reference, culture references. I don't know. I don't know anything about sports or anything right now. So like, you can't relate to them anymore.
Yeah, that did happen. So like at first she would try to go, but you could just tell that like she was in her own bubble. And like over time, Toni did just kind of stop coming to stuff. And it was like way more apparent that like, oh, this would be so great if only Toni and her family were here, So like she tried and she came to what she could, but like it definitely became like less and less time where we saw Toni over the years for a while.
Yeah. So did there ever come a point in your guys' relationship where I guess it became more contentious, I guess, like was there friction kind of created? Do you feel like you kind of drifted apart, again, 14 years with that sort of dynamic in your relationship? I would just imagine that would begin to create some conflict or some, real separation and distance between you both.
Yeah, we had our moments. Like she would call and I would try to have a conversation, not about the end of the world or something, not about what's going on in the news. And, then I'd get annoyed with her. I'd like hang up on her or something,
Yeah, we'd argue about it. I'd be like, you need to listen. Father's coming, and I would always like update her about North Korea, always give her the updates about that. And
every time she calls, she'd be like, do you see the news about North Korea? And like, I'm calling to talk to you about something totally different. We don't need to talk about North Korea.
It's so funny. Like I was working and like I had an assistant and I would go and I'd be like, oh, did you see what happened in North? Like I didn't have any other like normal conversation things to do. I'm like, did you see what happened in North Korea? And it's like, I felt like it was such a normal conversation, but it was very like, yeah, I just like, it seemed like a current event, but it was very much like the church conversation. We just thought everyone was talking about it because we talked about it.
I thought everybody was talking about North Korea. I thought everybody was scared about what's going on and everybody knew all the updates, but I don't think so.
No.
Yeah, you didn't realize that the church was just very much pushing a fear-driven narrative to make you afraid that something bad was about to happen and you better stay put. You better stay in the church or else. So yeah, that's interesting that you found in interactions with the quote unquote normal people that they were just somewhat oblivious to that. That would be kind of a strange thing. Like, why aren't you guys freaking out about this? Like, don't you understand? But that I guess it just kind of really highlights just that aspect of the fear that they just so deeply instill into you guys to keep you under the thumb, as it were.
So I know, oh, Lindsey.
Well, I was going to say the one thing that I always felt bad for Toni. She was so afraid about Yellowstone exploding. That was like her big doomsday thing. And I remember when she first told me, I was like, because she was like, Denver's on the lava path of Yellowstone exploding. And I'm like, that might actually be true. And then I looked it up and I was like, I mean, it's like theoretically a possibility, but like, so is everything else, right? Like it's as much of a possibility as like every natural disaster anywhere in the world. And I would always feel so bad that like Toni like really thought that like tomorrow that was happening, that like Denver was being taken out by a lava river. And that really upset me. And so on one side it was annoying, but I had the compassion and it was more of like a sadness that like she had so much anxiety over it. And I was like, I feel bad that she really goes to bed worried about this. I was worried for her.
Yeah, that's interesting because we're kind of, here, obviously, we're kind of smiling and laughing about that dynamic. And there's, to somebody outside the cult or who's never been exposed to this sort of thing, it seems kind of silly, but it really is sad. And that's just one of the things that when you stop and think about that, oh, wait a minute, like this, it sounds kind of silly, but think about how that was completely controlling Toni and all these other people and every decision they were making. And just this, whether they were aware of it or not, this underlying anxiety, constant, unending anxiety that, again, is just so deeply implanted into members that they're just living with this irrational, really in so many cases, completely irrational fears of these events, cataclysmic events that just we should not be, dictating how we're living our lives because of the the tiny chance that they're actually going to happen. But these groups just capitalize on those sort of things because of the control that it can bring. And it's again, like we're kind of laughing about it, but it really is just, it's just, when you stop and think about it, it makes me just, it's so frustrating that they do that to people.
And there were so many times when it would be more amped up, don't you think, Anthony? Like say if North Korea, just did like a test or something, it would be more amped up, and then they would have a meeting where all of a sudden we do a special dedication, which means giving your money, or there's a new church that needs to open, so we need to support that church, and so they would use those disastrous situations to sort of scare us into giving more money. I mean, that's what it is, because we thought the time is coming, there's no time to waste. So we would take jewelry and we would go to the pawn shop. People were selling their houses. I know many sisters that sold their houses and gave the money to the church, because there's no, what's the point? We don't need to save, we don't need to worry about the future, we're going to heaven. So it is very impactful in your day-to-day decisions.
Yeah, definitely. Especially in 2011, I remember the church doing a lot of like what they'd call a bazaar in the East Coast, where people would bring in things that were important to them in their regular life. Like, here's my bicycle, here's my golf clubs, here's my, whatever, like my records, my everything. They'd go and they would basically create a flea market and sell these items, and everyone would basically like sell these like things that meant something to them just to raise a little bit of extra money for the church. And then I remember this one member who had like a couple $1,000 bike, and somebody didn't know what it was worth and sold it for like $50. And yeah, so people, they were just doing whatever they could to get as much money out of members, using the 2012 prophecy in order to do it. So yeah, living in the fear, you're right. It was definitely also used for people to have a reason and a purpose to give a little bit more. The end is so near. This is the final push.
Final push. I can hear Father's footsteps. We can
Yes.
hear them coming. How many times do we hear Father's footsteps?
Jordan, I have a question for you. In all of your time of interviewing people, have you ever heard of the Bazaar?
No, I have not. That's new.
I have not heard of that either.
If somebody's
Me
mentioned
neither.
it, yeah, no, I've never heard of that.
I have been talking to you guys for 3 years, and I'm still learning things that make me so mad. That is so messed up.
Yeah.
It makes me so mad.
Yes, I can
Crazy.
relate to
And
that.
like,
Yeah.
I were never in it, but then when I just feel like Jordan and I have a similar experience of like, oh, it's so stressful. I'm so stressed for you. The past you guys is. I'm sorry.
Yes. Yes.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so I did want to kind of circle back to the way that the church, kind of the way that they make you act, because you live with the church every single day. You pray in the morning, afternoon, you pray throughout the day, you pray for every meal, constantly, it's on your mind. You're keeping, every Tuesday night, every Saturday, all these different feasts, is keeping you away from the family. And then when you're around your family, you're this alien. You don't know how to behave, but also sometimes like you have to sacrifice things that are really important, and it hurts your family too. I've missed very important weddings and funerals and family events, and I've done things where I just moved without telling my family. I did some really terrible things that hurt people. Lindsey, I want to hear, was there ever something that Toni did because of the church that you found like very hurtful for your relationship? And Toni, also, and the other side, was there ever a time that Lindsey, hurt you because she refused to, become a member, or said something that hurt your faith, or whatever the case may be?
Great question.
That is a great question.
Toni, did you go to Grandpa's 80th birthday party?
Was that like a luau in the backyard?
Yeah.
No, I didn't.
You didn't go to that. So, to me personally, I didn't expect Toni to go to that, but I know for like our family as a whole, and sorry, Mom, I'm going to out you on this, but I think that my mom in the last year has even still brought this up. She said, I can't believe Toni didn't go to Grandpa's birthday party. Like, I know for my mom, that one was like, and that's not even my mom's dad. That's my dad's dad. So the 80th birthday party was like very devastating to the whole family. I remember being like, of course she didn't come. I don't know why you guys thought she would come.
I think I was in another city, Pueblo or Boulder, maybe.
Yeah.
That stuff is heartbreaking because you can't get it back.
I think I had a wall up, Anthony. So I think for me, I never expected my sister to, in order to keep myself from being so offended or hurt by it. Like, I knew Toni's rules were like no Saturday, no Tuesday night. And if there was an event at the church, it always took precedent over the family. And so I think I kind of shut myself down to it. Because I can't really think of anything that she did that I personally was like, what an a-hole. But to be fair, we didn't have any funerals that I can remember. I think that would have been I don't think anybody close to us died in the family that she didn't go to a funeral. And if that had happened, that's probably where I would say that would be the most offensive thing.
Oh, my husband's grandpa died, and I didn't go to his funeral. It was in a Catholic church, and I had my baby. He was little, and I was still like new in the faith, and everybody told me not to go. And, because it's in a Catholic church.
Did your husband go?
He did.
He did go.
But I have like such deep regrets about that. Yeah.
Okay, what'd I do to you? What'd I do to you? I wanna hear.
Man, let me get my list. I'm making a list. No, I'm kidding. Honestly, I would say that I don't think that Lindsey honestly did. This is so okay. I don't think that Lindsey really did anything to bother me. I honestly think that the way that she kept in communication with me and allowed me to like be open with her about it and sometimes preach to her, and the way that she allowed us to have that, not make me feel weird, and awkward, but like allow me to just let her know about the church and stuff. I think that more helped me more in the long run, because then in the end we still had that communication and that relationship. So I felt comfortable talking to her when I wanted to get out.
Toni, I thought you were going to say this one. Can I say the one that I thought you were going to say?
Sure.
When you were in Pueblo, there was one time that I did lose my patience with one of the brothers.
Yeah.
Because he would not leave me alone. And we had drove down there. It was then like a really stressful road trip. It was like a 3-hour trip with my daughter in the car and my mom. And by the time we got there, I was like frazzled. I think we were hungry. And this guy was like going at me with a Bible study. And I was like, hey man, like, and you lived in the house church, so I couldn't get away from him. And he kept following me. And I kind of lost my patience on him. Like in that way, when you get into like an argument with someone and you feel stupid after, because you're like, I lost my patience and I sounded dumb after, like I didn't present myself the way that I wanted to in that. And I felt like I was really rude to him. And so anyways, I thought you were going to, and you got really mad because you were like, what time are you guys leaving? There. I could tell you like, yeah, like it was just uncomfortable. That was like the biggest thing in my mind of like, sorry, Toni, I know I just like made this uncomfortable for everybody. But he wouldn't leave me alone. And I was like, want to do a Bible study with you.
I remember that. He was very pushy. But honestly, that didn't really, like it. I think it did bother me because I was like, okay, time for you to go. But we were used to that, right, Anthony? Like we were kind of used to that confrontation and like that friction and arguing with people. It was okay.
Yeah, I didn't like it for myself. Yeah. I was like, ugh, leave me alone, dude. I don't want to fight with you about this.
Well, I think, we get asked a lot by, family, people who have family members in the WMS, like what can they do? How can they get their loved ones out of the group? It's something that I just feel absolutely unqualified to address. I think largely because there's just not a one size fits all answer to that. It's such a difficult question to ask. And I think people so often expect, since we make videos and we focus on this topic and we seem to be the quote unquote professionals in the field, but I don't consider myself in any way to be a professional, to be able to give professional advice to somebody about the right steps to take to get somebody out. But in terms of, what I kind of seems to be a recurring theme, at least something that has helped different people, is kind of what it sounds like maybe Lindsey did and the way she kind of continued to interact with Toni, and that she wasn't super confrontational, at least, on a regular basis, it sounds like, and more so just maintained that relationship and continue to be the sort of person that Toni just knew, even though she knew obviously Lindsey didn't agree with the things she was doing or the church, but Lindsey presented herself as somebody that Toni trusted, and so I don't know what that looks like in every situation out there of all the different people that will listen to this, but I do think that's something maybe to consider. Those of you who have family in the WMS, just consider that sort of approach. Not to say that there's not an appropriate time to push back a little or to point out and say, hey, have you ever thought about this? Or what about that book that Ahnsahnghong wrote, Refuting Mother, whatever sort of evidence you might, want to point out. I know there are cases and there are situations where that is appropriate and I think can be helpful. But I think some people, they get so worried, so stressed, so angry, so, passionate about wanting to get their loved one out, that they think they're just going to be able to go in there and just yank them out, that they're just going to be able to yell at them enough or tell them how stupid the things they're believing are or something, and just kind of grab them and yank them out really quickly. And unfortunately, that's just so often, it's just the nature of how deceptive and manipulative these groups are. That's just not going to work so often. And so I think, again, just considering that sort of approach of just what does it look like to be somebody who continues to be there for that person who is in the group, to continue to be somebody who is somebody that you can, the member feels like they can continue to confide in you, that you're not just going to try to, convince them that they're wrong or deceived or whatever, but just continues to maintain a friendship or a relationship. And so I just think I think that says a lot that you were able to do that, Lindsey. And I know that's been something I've heard more than once for sure as an approach that has been helpful to other members.
To be fair, too, at the time that Toni was in, there was not a lot of resources online. So a lot of the information that I know now about it, I didn't really know while she was in it. That's actually when she came out and started telling me more of the things that she would have never told me while she was in there to make it, she wouldn't have wanted me to know anything that would make it sound like a bad place. I don't know that I would have played my cards the same had I had the information at the time, because I would have been a lot more angry. There's so many things that now in retrospect, I can see is like, that was a cult, that was abusive. But while she was in there,
you never once said it was a cult while I was in there. I remember, like, you always were just like, "Oh yeah, Toni's in a weird church," and
but
she would never, ever call it a cult.
I did start to think it was, and I remember you were still heavily in it, and because I remember where I lived at the time that I started watching the cult documentaries where I was like, "Ooh, this feels a little too familiar." But I definitely didn't have the intel that I do now, like after speaking to members and watching Great Light Studio videos, having our own podcast, all of the examining stuff. I'd like to say I'd play my cards the same, but I don't know that I would have. I would have been a lot more angry.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So there's that. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah.
Well,
No, that makes sense. That makes sense.
I do think that maybe the fact that you didn't go in there, guns ablazing, with all these different like points that you would have seen online, that might have been like what was helpful. Because if you really knew, like I had the same thing. I had a sister who was outside who I kept in touch with, and I gave her some like conversations about the church. Like Toni, like I would filter things and I would, lie a little bit so I wouldn't give like the whole story. I'd give like little insights, and like slowly I felt comfortable giving like a little bit more detail, because in my mind it was like, she's not going to get the whole thing. Like I can't tell everything. I could only give like little bits, and maybe she could start to process. But her being a support, whether I wanted to stay in, whether I wanted to leave, just being there was very helpful for me to get out. So I think that you were kind of in a similar spot, if I'm not, misunderstanding it. And then Toni, I'm sure when she decided to leave, felt a lot more comfortable, telling you the full story. Toni, if you could elaborate on that, actually.
Yeah, definitely. Especially when you come out, you feel a lot of shame, and you don't even really know what happened to you, and you feel embarrassed, and you feel like everybody's going to say, "I told you so." Did you feel like that, Anthony? Like I was so...
Yes.
I didn't want to hear that, because I felt stupid. Like you feel like, oh my God, I fell for this. You know what I mean? There's a lot of shame.
A lot of our conversations were, "Don't tell mom and dad this yet." And then she would like tell a crazy story. And it was sad because I would be like, you shouldn't feel embarrassed about that. That actually sounds like very manipulative on their part. and they should feel bad for it, not you. And
I have a
thus
lot of
began,
guilt and blame.
thus began the podcast, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I
But
always say
I
for the members, yeah, like you left, the guilt and shame is what we were used to feeling all the time in the church. So you should give yourself some grace when you leave, not to feel those sorts of things as intensely as you did before. So, so you could go on. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, it's so true. I don't know. And you feel so awkward when you're leaving and you don't know where you belong, because the world is sinful and worldly, but you don't want to go back to the church. So it's a very, very scary place. So having my sister during that time was really, really helpful. I think it took me like months before I even told my parents that I wasn't going anymore on Saturdays. I think I still pretended like I was going on Saturdays, because all those things I missed and now I'm just not going to go, How can I explain that? All the vacations I missed or weddings or birthdays or barbecues or whatever. And I'm just not going to go. So it's embarrassing.
Yeah. Did anyone ever make you feel like you did something wrong? Did people forgive you for everything? Like, do you feel like you were ever met with, well, that was your choice, Toni. You did this on your own, or was it? I'm so
No.
sorry you went through that. What was the response you received when you
Yeah,
left?
I mean, you're right. Everybody was like, helpful and sorry and trying to be understanding, Nobody ever blamed me, but I did and sometimes still do, because those were things that we did and friendships that we chose to ruin, or, I don't know. It's very complicated, but it's a lifelong process of healing from it and learning and not doing that again.
Yeah.
No more
I don't
cult for
foresee
you.
you going back.
No.
Can I point out something interesting that I noticed Toni did? So right when she came out, she actually overcompensated, and I think is just now in her life kind of finding the boundary of like, okay, this is what I want my dynamic to look like. Like, I feel like when she first came out, she felt so guilty that she tried to overcompensate and tried to like extend herself to everybody all the time to like kind of atone for it, which makes sense, right? Like, but she didn't need to do that. And now it's good. It's cool to see her healing really at this point because she's finding that balance of like, okay, I don't have to be 100% like family or 100% cult. I can kind of live in the middle of that, and finding that balance for herself is really cool.
It is really
Did you
fun,
feel like that,
me
Toni?
and my little family, my husband and my 2 kids and my dog, we're like really becoming a family, and well, obviously, but you know what I mean? Like learning each other and discovering things that we enjoy doing together. And yeah, so that's really fun. I mean, life outside the cult is amazing. It's been nothing but good things. Everything has just gone up. Once you get past that really, really difficult time, that really difficult time of leaving, I think with the right support group and with therapy and whatever you need to do, I think that life is just really amazing outside.
Toni, do you think that overcompensation period that you were doing where you were keeping super busy with the family was also because you went from having something to do all the time in the cult to now you have all your time back and not knowing what to do with it? So you just had to keep active and put it somewhere? Because I know I was always really busy. When I left, I was always trying to fill my time up like constantly. I would never feel comfortable sitting at home. But yeah, I'm not sure if that was a part of it for you or if it was just
Definitely. And also feeling like you need to be like with people all the time, or like doing your best to say yes to everything, not knowing at all how to have boundaries, just
Yes.
just doing, just overextending yourself. And so, so now I'm starting to learn boundaries and doing the things that I want to do, and spending my time the way that I want to spend my time, I think is something that's new, and I'm enjoying it. Because, Anthony, every single minute was filled. Every minute
Yes.
was filled. And so you don't have to think about what you want to do because you already know what you're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm. And now you have autonomy, and you have to fill up your time with your decisions, and nobody's there to tell you this is what you have to do. This is what it's going to get done now. This is what the correct choice is. Now you have to make all these choices. And when you go for however many years, 14 years, where every decision is made for you, into now you have to be responsible for yourself. It's kind of hard to regain your trust in your own mind, because you were told don't use your own mind for so long.
It's so true. And I think that's why that little period is so scary. But once you get past that, then it's really free, like a really free feeling, don't you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah. You're like, oh my God, all these hours are mine. I get to do whatever I want to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Saturdays are a great day now.
Yeah.
You actually get to rest on the Sabbath.
Yes.
But one other question that I did, want to look at with the two of you, because I didn't even realize that you both basically had your children at the same time. Lindsey having and raising your child, outside the cult, and then Toni, the sister, raising your child in the cult. Did you notice any sort of like difference, in development between your children, and the way that they behave, the way that they spoke, or played with other kids, or had their self-esteem, or like was it pretty much like the same, or did you notice some sort of differences between how they behaved because of the two different environments?
Oh, Anthony. Our children are like personality wise, like polar opposites. I have a feisty, sassy girl, and Toni has a sweet, quiet boy. But when they were kids, there was some things that came up. The Santa thing was really funny because, okay, if anyone has children listening for some reason, close their ears. I don't know why children would be listening to this, but this was so cute to me because they wouldn't fight about if Santa was real or not. They would fight about if Santa was Satan. So it wasn't that Tony's son even really didn't think that Santa Claus, he would never tell my daughter like Santa's not real. He would say Santa is from the devil. And I always thought that was so cute because I was like, I think he kind of believes that Santa Claus is still real. Just that it's a bad thing. It's just like an evil. So that was a cute little argument that we'd overhear because I'd be like, that's adorable. Because he's Santa's like a real thing. Like,
and if you knew the sort of like propaganda videos that he'd have to watch in order to come up with that concept.
Yeah. And I would be like, at least he's not telling her flat out, like Santa Claus is like a construct of your parents,
Yeah.
I think it was mostly around holiday times, like trick-or-treating time, it would be a big difference. My son would be scared.
That would scare Tony's son a lot. And then my daughter would be like not understanding why he was like hiding in the other room, away from trick-or-treaters. So that was always really sad.
So I guess that's interesting that he, I'm assuming fairly young, was aware enough of the church's teaching about Halloween that it actually was frightening him to want to, remove himself from it. So, what sort of things were communicated to the kids that he had in his mind that would make him want to hide from it?
From birth, we were teaching them that if you celebrated Christmas, you were going to hell. and that Christmas is from the devil himself. And so, do you remember, Anthony, around Christmas time and Halloween time, we would watch like those History
videos.
Channel from the History Channel. Okay, so that's why we didn't think it was propaganda.
It was cut and edited from several. You could tell like the narrator's voice changed, and there's like little bits and pieces, but they did splice together this like group of videos to make a sequence that made sense.
And there'd be a lot of videos, or pamphlets, or lots of different things, Eloise, about how dangerous Christmas is, which would it would hurt his heart because he would see his cousin doing it, and so it would make him scared for them and sad for them. So also the children were having anxiety too, not just us about the end of the world, but the children were worrying about their friends at school, and they were worrying about their family members too. And then the children have to remove themselves in class too a lot of times because they're celebrating the Christmas things. And so the children are thinking that their friends are going to hell. And so that's also a lot of why the children are preaching too at school. Sometimes they're preaching because they feel like they need to, but a lot of times it's because they don't want their little friends and their friends' families, to suffer. And so that's, because children have really genuine hearts, so they really, really believe this, So that's very sad.
Are you feeling the frustration again, Lindsey?
Yeah, your face looks frustrated.
You see my face? This is why audio is better too. When I get upset, I get just
well, when he'd have to separate himself, did that cause him to be ostracized from his friend group? Like, did that make him like unpopular because of his strange beliefs? And then also, even though like he was being separated from them with these different holidays, what was your advice to him about this sort of separation? Like, what would you feel like would be the response?
So I would always do my best to try to not make him feel like that, but it's really hard not to. I always worried about, whether it would separate him from the other kids. So I would always have a little special conversation with his teacher, about why, we don't celebrate these holidays. And so, yeah, a lot of that was happening. But, then he would come home and we would say, "Oh, you received so many blessings today. You were so blessed by Father, Mother, because you overcame all the persecution." And this, because the children know that they also need to take on suffering because they're sinners. So they're also willing to take on the suffering and the hardships and the persecution. So they also feel that blessing, And I remember so many times in car rides, just talking to him, going to church, like, I know that you're not like other kids, but in heaven, your rewards are going to be, you're going to be so abundant and you're going to be so blessed. And we would talk about heaven, so vividly. So we would just continuously reassure him like that,
I remember at an early age, I was in the car with him and we drove past like a normal church and he went, "That's Babylon." And I was like, "How the hell do you even know what Babylon?" Like, sorry, Jordan. I don't know how. Stop me if I'm like cursing.
No, you're good. No, you're fine.
Yeah, he called it Babylon, and I was like, "What did you just say, child? You're like 4 years old. How do you even know that word?"
I mean, they're taught from an early age. They're taught not to hate other churches, but but they know that there's evil spirits in those churches. So even when little kids see other churches and they see other people celebrating holidays, those little kids are believing that those are evil spirits and that those people are damned.
So how has that transition for him been, like getting out? I mean, what?
It was really hard also coming out because it was COVID and he was sort of like in the middle school stage, all of that was awkward. But me and my husband have just always been very honest and open with him about everything, even our own struggles coming out. And I think that that's been really helpful. We've just always been really open with him and always offered him any type of therapy, which he really, hasn't wanted to try yet. But he's such a lovely, well-rounded human being, and he's very sweet and smart, and so I think children are so resilient, and I think that as long as you're honest with them, and that's also another reason why I made the podcast. We wanted to make a podcast so that when he's ready, he can also have the ability to listen to some of the things, and maybe memories that he doesn't have. In my mind, it's always sort of something that I want to leave for him, for the future, because he's still a kid. So
Yeah.
There's
that's cool.
there's one story that Toni won't let me tell him. Can I say it on the YouTube channel, Toni? Do you know which one it is?
yeah, of course.
If you need to set your boundaries, Toni.
It's just so people will understand who are in the cult why you would do this, but it really makes me feel like such a bad parent.
Okay,
You can share it. It's okay. It's okay. I really don't mind.
This is my answer to one of Anthony's things. Like, did Toni do something that made me mad? And this is the answer to it.
You can do it. It's fine.
Okay. I think it was his 5th or 6th birthday. His birthday was on a Saturday. And so I was like, I'm going to go see my nephew on his birthday. They're at church all day. That's fine. So I went and got him like balloons and a present. And I showed up to the church. And Toni was like, oh, don't tell him today's his birthday. I told him his birthday's tomorrow because he's going to want to celebrate it and like have a party, but we have to be at church all day. And like to me, I was like, you told him that his birthday isn't until tomorrow so that you guys could stay at church all day. And she was like,
he wasn't that old. I think he was like 2 or 3.
Oh.
Not that it matters, okay? It's still not cool, but I'm just saying, like, I don't think that he knew.
That one made me mad because I was like, day. You tricked him that it's his birthday on the wrong day. Okay, that's my story.
Well, he was gonna have his birthday the next day on a Sunday when it's allowed for us to do a birthday. Because we were supposed to celebrate birthdays. Like, they would allow us to celebrate the kid's birthday, but you weren't like allowed to do like a big thing.
So speaking about these sorts of like what you can and cannot do, and sort of the things that are borderline that we as adults are expected to do, but for kids, we've come up with some questionable things, such as 10 days in a row of 5 a.m. and 8 p.m. like all day church, fasting 3 days, or fasting half the day for certain feasts. Did you have your child participate? If so, at what age did you begin? And then Lindsey, what was your reaction after finding out about this, if she had the child participate?
For some reason, I didn't really consider my child fasting until he was maybe like 1 or 2. Okay, I know that sounds young, but like people were fasting their babies, and I didn't know that. But as soon as I found out about that, like the sisters who had strong faith, the moms with strong faith, they had their babies fast. So once I caught on to that, so fasting for the feast, so like unleavened bread fast, Father's that one for Father's Ascension. And so that would be from midnight until about 4 or 5 p.m. the next day. No food and no water. But when they're little, that's really, really sad because they're asking you for water at least. They're trying to go to the water fountain, but it's covered with a big trash bag. And so they can't, you have to tell them again, like, even when they're like 1 or 2 and they may not understand, you're still telling them, oh, Father is blessing you so much today. Father, Mother, see your suffering, and you're going to be blessed in the future. Just endure a little bit more. It's okay. It's okay. And it's really also hard on the parents, trying to like comfort their children when they're also fasting.
Yeah.
Toni.
What?
I have a memory unlocked.
Oh God, what? Oh, tell me.
What?
What?
Did you say tell you?
I
Okay,
said tell me.
you can. Okay, Jordan, Toni might want you to take this out because I don't know
Are you
that I
allowed
should
to
say.
edit?
That's
But we're
fine.
live, girl.
No, we're not
Oh
live.
no, we're not
Okay.
live.
Okay.
When we lived together and our babies were like tiny babies, you guys did a fast, and you wouldn't put formula in his bottle. You were giving him water, and I told you I will call child services on you if you make your baby fast. You don't remember
So
that?
maybe I was only giving him water when he was a baby, and not formula.
You tried to do that, and I was like, "Don't you dare!" It was like it was like in the morning. You were like, "I'm just giving him water because we're fasting, so I can't put formula in the bottle." And I was like, "Absolutely not! I draw the line there."
Well,
And
maybe
I was
then I
like,
didn't. Maybe I listened to you.
"Yeah, you must have." But that happened like early in because like I just remember that fight in our old apartment. This is so weird because it does resurface things. This is
Maybe
so
he was a
fascinating.
little bit older, and he was like off of
No,
formula, but I was giving him water.
he was a baby because we lived together at that time, and they were only 6 months when we moved apart from each other.
That is so messed up. See,
I
there's a
know
lot
that's
of
what I mean. I
dumb
don't
things.
know if you want that in there. You should take that out.
It's also dangerous, right?
Hey.
But the thing is, it's like people are still doing that. Like there are still moms in there doing that, and they're young moms.
Yeah.
They don't know better, just like we were. So I think we should keep it in because maybe it makes me look bad, but at least it could help somebody else.
Yeah,
Well-
if you're
well,
a
and I was
mom and
gonna
you
say, I
have a
don't think
baby, don't make the baby fast.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't think it makes you look bad at all, Toni. I think what it does again is just emphasizes how messed up, how deeply manipulative this group is, and just how intensely it can change a person's entire perception of reality. That really, I that's not on you. That's not on any of the people who have been in this group. I mean, there's a certain level of accountability to our choices, but I just think that, I don't know. I don't think that you are not to blame for that decision because that wasn't even you making that decision. That was the church making that decision through you. That's just indoctrination in action. And it's, yeah. So I would hope that you don't have, residing guilt or anything like that, or other parents, who I'm sure have had similar, instances like that, who have come away and looked back and cringed at decisions they made. I don't think it can be emphasized enough how much that just wasn't you making that choice independently. Like Anthony, you talked about regaining your autonomy when you left, which just means you didn't have it when you were there. Like you weren't making these decisions as a free agent. You just were so deeply, your mind so deeply ingrained in this junk, in the fear. I mean, in large part, many parents make these decisions, even out of love for their kids, because they're worried about what will happen to their kids if they don't. Well, what if my kid doesn't fast? Does that mean he's, what does that mean for our family? Are we going to be out of Father's will? And so it's like in many of these situations, you're actually making what you perceive to be the most loving, the best decision for your kids as a mother, which is obviously, looking back now, you see how messed up a lot of those things are. But that's just me trying to say, I hope you don't feel guilty about that kind of stuff, because I just don't think that was you making those decisions ultimately.
That was so touching. That made me feel so much better. Thank you.
Yeah, could I just put
welcome.
a member hat on for a second like this?
Yeah.
So if it's God's will for us to fast on this day, does your child not have a soul?
Right.
Of course your child has a soul. So what if Father comes and your child didn't participate? What's going to happen to his soul? And you're responsible for this child's soul. So, what about your soul? You're supposed to make sure this child does, do you really believe father and mother would ask anything that would hurt your child? Is that the kind of faith that you have?
Oh my God,
But
that's
this
so
is
true.
Exactly like the kind of
word for word. Yep.
Yeah.
What they would say.
That's
say.
this kind of stuff you have in your mind. Yeah.
So, then you don't have faith. And even if something did happen, you'll go straight to heaven. You're following God's will. It's better to follow God's will. Obedience is, so great. And that's what we need in order to enter heaven. So we have this being told to us and being reassured that we're making the right decision. And our entire friend group, everyone around us is saying, you're doing the right thing. Like, this is what you're supposed to do. If you're being told by everybody that you're doing the right thing and, for you and for your child, this is the advice being given. This is people who are presenting themselves as if they have ultimate authority. So if they're telling you to do these things for, or for or against your child, then this is just the advice that they're giving as somebody who's presenting themselves as the ultimate authority.
You guys,
it can get dangerous. So
that's what I was just thinking.
Yes.
This is dangerous.
Yeah.
One note that really upset me later in the process of learning that when you guys were fasting, you would not eat or drink water for 3 days. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Yes.
but I never did that to my son. But yeah.
No. Oh, no. I know you didn't. And I know that if you did it, I don't think that you were depriving your baby for 3 days of formula either. I think you did one full day where he was just getting water. And I was like, nope, you put the formula in there, girl. Anyways, the 3 days with no water, I looked it up to see, because I was like, how long can you go without water? If you hit 3 days without water, that's when organ damage can start happening. And I was like, the fasting done there is so on the cusp of so dangerous for your guys' bodies, the adult human beings. Forget about the kids fasting. Not drinking water for 3 days. Right? I know that is so
do maybe 5 days. Yeah, I never
do that.
Made it through
Really?
So bad.
I was told that the only one who does longer is Zhang Gil Jah, that she does 7 to 10 days, which I don't believe.
That's a lie. She would die.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
She's not.
Right.
Yeah, see, we're told that she does these 7-day fasts. So we're like, oh, she's God, but yeah, she's in the flesh. We can do at least 3 to 5.
Yeah, and then that she has to go and do all these different activities. So when we're on the 3rd day of this fast and I'm exhausted just walking from one side of the church to the other side, I've been sent out to go preach in the streets of Manhattan while I on the 3rd day of the fast, and I would walk a block and have to sit down and then trying to speak to somebody. Meanwhile, what fasting does to your breath, let me tell you, you need to brush your teeth constantly because your dry mouth is just not good. Anyway, that's just a random.
That's how you knew who was fasting or not. But it's true. They still expect you to go preaching. You're still expected to preach. You're still expected to bear fruit. You're still expected to do your studies and keep all the services. Nobody's really supposed to know that you're fasting. It's supposed to be between you and father, mother.
Yeah, I feel you, Lindsey. It's fun to have somebody who wasn't in it here with me, because your facial expressions are what I feel all the time listening to this stuff. As also somebody who was never in the church, but so what I guess, Toni, what did you begin to see and experience in the church that again, 14 years, very long time to be committed. So what were the things that started to kind of chip away at your faith and started to make you really step back and reassess and question all of this?
Well, honestly, it wasn't even the doctrine or the teachings, which I know they're going to love hearing that. You know how they always use that, Anthony. It was more you could just reach this point of exhaustion where your body can't do it anymore. And so I got kind of sick. And so I had to, I couldn't go to preaching anymore. Of course, I could go to Sabbath and everything, but because of that, little by little, you kind of start to get separated, and then they kind of start shunning you a little bit. Even if you're sick, and that's why you can't go preaching, right? And then, so I was kind of like going in and out, keeping service and then leaving. Kind of like, have you ever heard when they say, physically out, mentally in, something like that, So I was like going like maybe like once a month, once every few months or something. But like I still really believed. I was like scared. I was scared to say whether I believe or not. You're like, I don't know what to do. And anyway, then COVID happened, and I was like, oh my God, this is it. Father is really coming. This is my time. I have to buckle up. This is what the sign, that it's really true. So then I wanted to keep the Passover. And then I received a long message from a sister. It wasn't even from a church leader, from a sister that told me I'm not allowed to keep the Passover this year because I didn't tithe for the last year. And, because I didn't tithe like the past, I don't know, few months or something. And I was allowed to keep the second Passover, but I'm not allowed to keep the first Passover. But, that was when everything was starting to shut down, because that was springtime of that year, which is right around when Passover is. So I was really scared. And I had kept the Passover for all those years, every single year, me and my husband and my children. And now all of a sudden they told me I can't keep Passover. I'd never, ever heard of them telling somebody that they can't keep Passover, because up until that time, anybody could keep Passover. Even if you hadn't come for years and years before. You remember how you'd have that push right before Passover? And we would even send out postcards. We would go visit people that we hadn't seen in forever. You wanted to get as many people to come for Passover as you could, because that's the biggest feast. That's when we're all going to get our blessings. But now they're telling me, who was a former deaconess, devoted all my time, everything for them. And now it just really felt like a betrayal. Like, well, first I was scared. I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to go to heaven, but then when I sat with it, it just felt so wrong. Why wouldn't they allow me to keep Passover? Would God really do that? And that's when it really started to unravel for me.
And what exactly was the reason again that you were unable to do it?
Yeah.
Because I wasn't having my tithe and I wasn't doing my attendance. You know how you have to keep service at least 4 times a month to be considered a regular member, and you have to tithe at least once a month to be a regular member. And since I hadn't been doing that, I wasn't allowed to come, me or my children or my husband.
Yeah. So it came down to the dollar amount. So you didn't give them enough time and money in order for you to be worthy of heaven. Like that's the litmus test for them. Did they give us money?
Doesn't that show you right there exactly where their priorities are? Exactly what they're interested in with their members. Are they really interested in getting them, eternal salvation and forgiveness of sins? No, they're interested in the time and the money that the members can give to them.
And it sounds so stupid, but like I really thought that maybe Mother Zhang Gil Jah would call me. I don't know if you ever thought that, Anthony, for a moment. Like, there was a moment when I was like, if this is the truth, maybe she'll call me. And she'll be like, oh, it's okay, Toni, come back to the truth. This is the truth, because she would know me. But there's cricket, nothing. Nobody called, none of the leaders called me. The only communication I've ever really had is from members with little faith who contact me because they don't know better.
Yeah, because nobody's going to tell them directly, don't contact Toni.
Right, because then they'll ask questions.
Yeah.
Right.
But during this time of in and out where you're kind of borderline trying to stay in, maybe you're not. Lindsey, did you start to notice something different in her behavior during that time where she was kind of struggling and kind of a member, but kind of not a member? Was that on your radar at all? Or was it just, Toni's acting weird again? So
it was very hush hush. She didn't want my parents to know. This was about the time that she was like, don't tell them but I didn't go to church on Saturday. And I'd be like, I'm not going to tell them until you're ready, because it will break their heart if they think you're coming out of it and then you actually go back into it. So I kind of played a little bit maybe into the like decision of like, don't tell mom and dad until you're really out of it. That probably happened. Do you think that was like 6 months before COVID? Would you say, Toni? Where you were like not really going as much and you were kind of like, I don't know how I feel about it. But yeah, when COVID,
just like, they're shunning me so bad when I go. Like, I would only go maybe once a month or something, and nobody would even look me in the eyes. It was like I was diseased, and that really hurt because those are my brothers and sisters, and like especially the workers, the other deaconesses. You're close. You think you're close with them, you think they're your family, and then like they won't even look at you.
Well, Toni, you kind of glossed over this because you said I was a former deaconess at this part. Yeah. When Toni decided to have her second son, because she has 2 kids, that was when, from an outside perspective, is when I started kind of hearing that was when Toni, I thought, was like removing herself, but then kind of later heard that like she was being pushed out of her role as a deaconess. And now that I've heard so many former member stories, it sounds like it was intentional that Toni was kind of being pushed out of her role as a punishment for having her second son.
You think so? I never thought of it like that. Do you think so, Anthony?
Yeah. That was kind of when you lost your position as a deaconess, right? Because you couldn't
kind of lost my faith, because what faith did I have if I had a baby? Because Father's coming.
They do like to take leaders and then almost like put them under pressure cooker like situations sometimes where everything goes wrong, and then they start to remove things from you because they want to basically knock you down and have you humbly go back to them and work harder to regain what you've lost, what they've taken from you. So I can see that here you are having your child, and now they want to hurt you back for making a decision against, your spiritual family. Here you are not able to preach as much, having to give more money to a child because you have to bring them up and care for them. And, so in spite of that, it's like, oh, well, her heart's not really here, obviously. So, why should she get the blessing? Let's give it to somebody who takes this seriously. And then like, they know that by removing blessings, it's going to hurt you, because it's you feel like that's your ticket to heaven, that you were entrusted with these things, and now you're looked at like, I'm not trustworthy anymore. That's why you have to give it to somebody else. So psychologically, the way that they give you like work to do, like you'd think, oh, I have less work, like you think that it'd feel like a good thing, but it's not. It doesn't feel like a good thing. It feels like demotions, and like they're mad at you. Like that's how you feel as a member when your blessings or your positions and things are slowly taken away from you, and it's deliberate. They want you to feel hurt. So it might be a retaliation for you having the child and doing your own thing. So
I
wouldn't be surprised.
Never thought of it like that, but that makes a lot of sense.
Think if you were a deaconess and somebody who was a gospel worker decided to have a child, wouldn't you kind of feel like, do they really think Father's coming?
Like, that's what I heard other deaconesses. What kind of faith do they have? Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I know my second nephew made it harder for Toni to go to church too. Like he wasn't like my older nephew. He was not like sitting quietly through service. He was running around. He was climbing stuff. Like he was a lot more rambunctious. I remember that coming up a lot. Like it's not the same. It's not like I can just like take him and he's following the rules and he's listening. He's just like so rebellious. And so like in my heart, I was like, that's hilarious,
And Toni's probably like, what was his sin in heaven?
Right. What was my sin in heaven? I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. No. Yeah, that was actually a really big, it was a hindrance for me to go to church with him because he really hated it. And, I'd sit in the back with him and me and my two sons would sit in the back on the sister side, and they did not like that at all. That's not the way we were supposed to be. So it was always awkward, after I had him. But I can definitely see how maybe they did push me out like that. And, they're just ready to move on to somebody new, somebody younger with less responsibilities and with no children. And
Yeah, I was going to say that definitely sounds right up their alley in terms of how they'd respond to something like that and kind of use it as a punishment. I can't, obviously I don't know the full details there, but this sounds very familiar to what I've heard from a lot of other members and how they'll be demoted or punished in some way, blessings removed, for not being as committed as they should be. So from there, what kind of became the point when it went from, you felt it was weird, it was unfair, you were hurt by the fact that they didn't let you keep Passover. And so was that sort of the ultimate tipping point? Was that when you said, okay, I'm done with this for good? Or what was that process of going from there to making that what really is a big decision for having been in the church for so long, of saying I'm not going back?
I would say that was
and
my
hello
tipping
to Anthony's
point.
cat.
Hi, kitty. I would say that was a tipping point for me, because Passover, you guys know, Passover is it. That's everything. That's their whole thing. So the fact that they weren't allowing me to keep it, it just felt so wrong. And so after that, I never went back after that. And then, it took a while. It took a while before I could even say what had happened or even known what happened to me. I just totally just set it away for a minute, and then that's not good. And that's not good. So
Toni,
Yeah.
I remember.
Yeah.
I just remembered coming to your house between the time of like Passover, the beginning of it, and when you would have like done second Passover,
yeah.
and coming to your house and like checking on you to hang out, like coming over to hang out, but also like, are you good? Are you okay? I remember being really worried about you because I knew that was like, you were like, I'm not going to do second Passover. I think I'm done. But like also being so scared about it. And I
Because if
remember
you
like,
miss second Passover, then that's it. Like, that's your commitment. You are not going to go back. And I didn't. But it was so scary. Like, you literally feel like your whole world has crumbled. You don't know what's up. You don't know what's down. You just feel so discombobulated. You don't know what reality is. You don't know. It's wild and it's hard to explain. But yeah.
Yeah.
Here we are.
So how did you move? Here we are. Yeah. So how did you move them from that to realizing, okay, this is a cult, and
yeah,
even getting to the point, where now you have a podcast that people listen to, where you're you're explaining the issues with this group, and obviously have a opinion about the group that's strong enough that this is not a good thing. And I think I know for a while there you weren't using the term cult on your show. I'm not sure if you've changed that at all at this point. But obviously at this point go ahead.
Well, yeah, I remember even when we started the podcast, I wouldn't say the word cult, and it's still not my favorite thing to say, but there's no other word that I know to say. It took me years to even understand that it is a cult, that I was in a cult, that we're cult survivors. Actually, all of us, I think all four of us in a way are cult survivors after all the trauma and everything that we have heard and been through. So that is a long journey. I think speaking out and talking through what we went went through is really, really important. Even though you don't want to, and you may feel embarrassed or shameful or something. When you talk it out with people that you trust, I think it's very, very helpful, and it helps unlock some things. Even if you write it out, like in a journal, I think that writing was really helpful, and like writing down timelines of what happened was really helpful, and years and dates, and just sort of trying to sort through that. That was really helpful. Watching documentaries was really helpful, and I remember documentaries about Heaven's Gate was super helpful, and just learning about other cults is really good to do, because then you can see yourself in there, but it's sort of from a distance, and so it feels a little bit more comfortable. And then once you're ready and comfortable, then you can kind of apply it to, oh my goodness, that's what I went through. Oh my goodness, that's what happened to my family. That's what happened to my friends. So, and therapy, and just having a good support group also has really, really been helpful. And my beautiful little sister. I couldn't have done it without you.
Aw. Thanks for coming out. It's been so fun since. I'm so happy you're at it. I got my sister back. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have something else, Anthony?
Yeah, I was just thinking about, now, because when she joined, you guys were very young, and you had this long period of time, 14 years, from being in your, late teens, early 20s, and then being 14 years older. I'm not going to give a number, but there you are 14 years later. And you could reconnect and build that sisterly bond again. And, how close have you guys got since then? Do you feel like this experience brought you guys closer together than you were before? Because, now you've kind of opened up to each other about your lives and what you've been through, and like it caused you to really reflect back on the importance of your family bond? Or do you think that you guys would have been like as close as you are today if Toni never joined the group?
Fabulous question. I don't know. We have a joke in my house that every time Toni calls, because we talk a lot on the phone, my whole family will be like, "Oh my gosh, you guys just talked." And it's a joke that's like, "Yeah, but it's for work because it's for the podcast, so it's my job." But like Toni and I would probably still talk multiple times a day, with or without having, because when we're talking, we're not really talking about podcast stuff.
Yeah, I think that we would have been close, but I think that we realized the value of our relationship more because of that. I think. Like, I think we would have still been really close, but I think that, I feel like, don't you think, Anthony, that like things are so much more valuable and precious because we didn't have them for so long?
Yeah. Time, for instance, just having time is so important, and just, friendships, and like I try to be a really good friend to my friends. So, because now I value the fact that, they're here, and before the friends in the church, you leave and you see that you never really had a true friendship. And actually, like, I've built such good friendships with other ex-members. So like that's also like a great thing I feel like I've been able to get from the whole experience is, you guys as an example.
That's true. I have a whole set of friends I never expected to have from all this.
So true. All over.
You know what I was thinking?
Thank you, WMSCOG.
For you guys too, I imagine that the freedom to not think that like tomorrow or today could be the end of the world. Like that's also probably very freeing once it gets past the idea of being so terrifying. I bet that's freeing, like so freeing of like now you can make plans for your future because you're not worried that tomorrow it's all going to be for naught,
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure for me at least, leaving was I left in like debilitating debt that I didn't expect to have to worry about in my future. And I think a lot of people are kind of in that situation where they haven't, like, I'm like, 401k for what? Why would I invest in something? But Toni, did you have that kind of situation too when you got out?
Oh yeah. Like, you come out and you're like, oh no, I do need to plan for the future. It is exciting. It's exciting. It's also scary because you feel like you're behind. You feel like you need to hurry up and get where you're supposed to be. But it's okay. We're where we need to be.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to keep you guys too long. This has been really fun. And I know that for those who want to hear more and from both of you, go check out the Playing in Traffic podcast, where you can hear many more hours worth of Toni and Lindsey, and of course their conversations with other former members. But yeah, unless I guess what we usually do to wrap it up, and maybe I'll just give either of you a few seconds here to share, I guess, what would be your advice to to listening members, and maybe Lindsey, maybe you could approach it from the perspective of, if you have any advice for those who have family or friends, what would maybe your words of advice be for them? So either one of you that might want to go first, go ahead.
I'll go. If you're able to, be patient and don't be too pushy, and don't just constantly tell them that they're in a cult. I don't know, just trying, if you're able to be present and let that person know that, like, when they leave, that they do have a community outside of it without judgment. Like, I imagine leaving would be really scary if you thought like your whole family was going to be mad at you, and maybe just, however you can relay that to them while they're in, that like you love them no matter what, unconditional, and just kind of being their support when they come out, because they're going to be in a weird spot and they're going to need support and help, and just doing whatever is you're capable of providing for them.
I can imagine that's so frustrating, though. I can't even imagine. You probably just want to shake them and be like, listen to me. Look at all the evidence. It must be really hard. But I think that's a good point, is having patience. I would say I really love Anthony's shirt. Truth. What does it say? Truth is not slander. That's what I want to say to the people that are listening, that are still in. Okay. Truth is not slander. I just want to say, just try to take a break. That's what I want to say. Try to just take a break, a 1 day, 2 day break, just for yourself. If it's really the truth, it's going to still be there when you go back. Okay. Just take a little break and maybe, go on a little trip or something. Just think for yourself for a little bit, and just take some time for yourself. I think that that's really important, because they just keep you so busy. You never have time to reflect or think. And so if you can just take a little bit of time for yourself and sleep and eat and maybe reconnect with an old friend or something that you really enjoy doing, and just see how it feels, and don't be afraid to look around for yourself and to search for information. It's okay. It's okay. And if it's the truth, it'll stand up, If it's the truth, then you can always go back. They're going to be there. But if you're, whatever feelings you're having, or, to like listen to your instincts and to listen to your own thoughts, that's what I just want to say. Why are you looking at me like that?
Yeah.
Anthony?
I'm not looking at you like that. I'm looking at your sister because she was giggling a little bit during this. What did she say?
When you said if it's the truth, it'll be there when you get back. And I said, but it's not.
No. It's not. It's not. It's not.
That's the message we wanted to convey, Toni.
No, it's not the truth. It's not the truth. My point is like, you need to like take a minute. Take a minute for yourself and try to get a little bit of perspective of where you are in the world and what's really going on. Listen to some Beyonce, why don't you? And see how you feel.
There's more news updates than just North Korea, guys.
Yeah.
And there's great podcasts out there like Playing in Traffic.
Yes.
There you go. There you go. Give it a try.
Thank you, Jordan, for having us. And I just want to say, I know you've heard it so many times, but we just really, really, really appreciate all of your hard work and for taking the time to do this with us. You don't have to do this, but you choose to do this in your own free time. So we really, really appreciate it and helping us, spread the word. To spread the gospel that the WMSCOG is false.
Yeah. Can I share with Jordan the sentiment of the last email that we got?
Yeah.
Without disclosing any details of the person. We got an email.
Maybe he wants to finish recording first.
Okay. I'll tell you after.
Oh, that's okay. You can share it if you want. If there's not. Yeah, go ahead. We can cut it if we need to.
Yeah. I should probably cut it because this guy told us to keep him really anonymous.
Oh yeah, he did.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Okay, well we'll read it when we close down. So now we've teased everybody with this amazing email that they'll never be able to hear.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for coming on. This has been a lot of fun, and again, and thank you guys. Thank you for what you're doing because I think you're doing as much or more than I am, and putting out regular content that people have access to, because these interviews just help a lot of people to just listen to stories that they can relate to and say, okay, if they got through this, I can too. And I just think can't be overstated just how helpful that is for people. So thank you guys too. And to those listening, go check out the Playing in Traffic podcast and leave a 5-star review because that helps.
Yes.
I want to say that I think that between the two platforms, I think we make a dream team. Because I think for some people leaving a religious group, like your content is perfect for them. And then, we provide like just a different kind of version of it. Like it's more wacky and a little bit less like structure. You
got music in yours. You sing songs on the ukulele. That's something I just I can't bring to the table.
Go wherever the wind takes us. But it's like two different vibes. And I feel like together we complete this like really great resource for people coming out. So Jordan, you and I are honorary ex, never have been, but
there you go. I'm not sure I want to be, but I'll take it,
Like you're not ourselves,
You're with good company.
Here we are. We just got to embrace it. Yes, no.
Exactly.
No,
exactly.
No. In that case, I'm happy to belong to this group, A lot of great people. Great too. Friendships I've made as well.
Yeah. And I was thinking in honor of this particular duo, I know they like to always end their podcast in a certain way. I'm trying to remember what it was. Was it like, no, is that not it?
Oh, God.
I'll let you guys do.
All right, Toni, you do it.
Yeah.
Boom, baby.
Boom, baby.
Thank you for watching that video. Everything I do on this channel and all the videos and interviews that you might be watching are only made possible because of financial supporters. And so if you have any interest in supporting Great Light Studios, you can find links in the description below this video where you can find different ways that you can help me continue to make content like this.